Welcome back, everyone. It should come as no surprise that a serious problem in a lot of communities across our country and in our own communities, homelessness. And it also comes as no surprise that with the COVID virus, that this issue has become severe. And joining me today is someone I've interviewed before and just has a wealth of information about this topic and what's being done in our community and also how we can probably help. This is Andy Gilpin, who is the co-chair for the new Saratoga County Alliance. So welcome, Andy. Welcome back, I should say.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's so wonderful to be here. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the opportunity.
You're quite welcome. The reason I said the new Saratoga County Alliance is I want our viewers to know, I believe it was the last time that Andy and I were talking back in the fall, that the Saratoga Housing Alliance at that time was talking with the Saratoga Collaborative to end homelessness and a number of other agencies about how they might combine their efforts to become more effective and more efficient. And that happened, partially because of the CARES Act. In March, as you might recall, also on a federal level, that money was distributed across the country, something like $3 or $4 billion, to help agencies around the country try to combat homelessness, especially as it related to COVID-19. So, Andy, with that said, a lot of work has been done to form this alliance. Give us just a little bit of background from the time that you realized you were going to be able to form this alliance, and also the acknowledgement that you were going to get funds from the CARES Act.
Yes, yeah, you bring up a very great point that for many years we had talked about how to become more collaborative with our approach. And the Saratoga Alliance, Housing Alliance, was formed out of a need that we had HUD funding coming through the county, and how do we work together to make sure we're doing everything that's required, but also really work stronger together. And then there was the Saratoga Collaborative to End Homelessness, was really focused on efforts around the city. And many of us were going to the same meetings, and we just suddenly realized this is the best time that maybe we should really think about how do we combine forces and how do we make sure that everybody's resources are being used to the best ability, because we're all in it for the same reason. We all want to work to end homelessness. And with the CARES Act funding, it really gave the opportunity to supercharge that whole process, because now we have about $975,000 for Saratoga County, which is a large amount of money. And we know that with that resource and with those funds, we can really make an impact and good outcomes with homelessness if we all work together. So it's just incredible to see the community really rally, embrace this planning, embrace the idea that we want to strengthen our collaboration, and it took the whole community. They all came together very well for this, so it was really amazing. And now we're really positioned at a very strong point, I believe, to make some real impact.
I think that's wonderful. But a lot of us would tend to think, oh, we've heard about the issues with homelessness in the city of Saratoga, right? And to your point, it just struck me when you were saying, that the collaborative's focus was kind of on the city, but don't for one second, don't believe that this is not a county-wide issue. And so let's say the money, I think, hit about August, right? And
Yes.
really, I think if I've got it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, around November, you were really starting to implement some programs. And I really want to get into that. Andy, I was really impressed when I had the list here of the focus. And I want to kind of go into each one of these. There's about 4 of them for our viewers here. Street outreach. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, and if I could just back up for a second, it really
Sure.
was when the funding was, we're made aware that we had this for in August. The county through Department of Social Services was sort of tasked with bringing together the community as well. And so when we brought together, it was really their effort that helped us organize around this and decide on what these 4 core focus areas would be. So I do really think to give them credit that it was very good to have them at the table to help organize this, bring us all together. And street outreach was one of the main focuses, because we knew that to really address this issue of homelessness, you have to be on the streets. You have to be in places where people are. You can't wait for them to walk through the door for you to begin to help them. If you are doing active engagement with people, you can really help walk them through the process much easier than waiting for them to develop initiative or find ways to get resources on their own. So we really put a heavy influence on the street outreach portion.
You know what? You're bringing up a very important point that I think we're going to talk about in different ways as we go through the different initiatives and the focus. You know, if you're struck with homelessness, a lot of times there's a sense of lost pride. There's a sense of failure, and the people can tend to be very reluctant to seek help because in some ways it exposes the worst ways that they feel about themselves. So getting on the street, I've heard that, Andy, I've heard this a number of times. To get on the street and actually form a dialogue, form a relationship, and form trust with the people is really that first step, really is that first bridge, right?
It really is. It really is. And we've found, at the national level, state level, our own experience as a captain, that the street outreach effort is that perfect first bridge for folks, because many times it may be situational homelessness they've never faced in their whole entire life, and they don't know where to start. They don't even have an idea of where to start. Or it could be the person that has had long-term homelessness in their life, and they don't have the trusted partner that can help them walk through. They never developed a rapport. They never, they've had bridges burned, or they've, done things that have closed doors for them. But if they find the right partner to help walk them through it, and start that process, then we find that they exit homelessness so much quicker, and so much better.
What's another important thing to note here is the fact that that homelessness affects youth. It affects individuals. It affects families. It affects veterans and those that suffer domestic violence. When you realize that that's the universe that we're working in here, we could almost every single one of us say, "Oh my God, I know somebody who's dangerously close to being homeless because of one of those situations." And and toward that end, emergency sheltering is. And I'm thinking of the conversations that I've had with Maggie Frank at Wellspring, for instance, and also the veterans organizations that I've talked to. Emergency housing is really an important piece of this puzzle, right? And you highlighted that as one of your focus.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that as another very much one of the important pillars to making sure people stay safe in this time of COVID and the pandemic. When they are homeless, having a safe place to be, that they can be off the streets and reduce their risk of exposure or exposure to the community. So you have to support the emergency shelter programs that are in the county, to make sure they have what they need, to make sure they can have enough PPE and other safety protocols in place, support their operations. Because without a healthy and strong sheltering program, you can't make that next step into permanent housing. You can't get people to bridge, because you can see them on the streets and meet them on the streets, but they need a place to stay temporarily as we move them down the line to permanent housing. So we did really see emergency sheltering as being another important pillar in this.
I'm sure. And then if you add the layer of domestic violence on top of it, again, just to reference Maggie, who you and I both know well, her thing is that people are reluctant to leave a domestic violence situation because they have no place to go. And just think about the emotional toll that takes on a person and their children, for instance. It can be pretty devastating. Rapid rehousing, not something that I understood immediately. Give us a little rundown explanation on rapid rehousing.
Yeah, for folks who work within the homeless services, that's a very familiar term, but to the general public, I don't think they understand quite as much what that means. But in its essence, it's really taking somebody who's homeless and moving them to permanent housing right away. And when you're saying rapidly moving them into a permanent housing situation, so that somebody who needs first and last month's rent or security deposit, we have the funding now to provide for them to get them established. And with this funding, we can also do some ongoing rental assistance till they're on their feet and stabilized with an income that'll help them stay in that housing. And this is one of another very important part. I'll keep saying that, but another important part of this whole recipe for success is that folks can move quickly to that permanent housing, because once they have permanent housing, the stability in their life dramatically increases, and then they can start to deal with the other issues. Maybe it's benefits, maybe it's mental health, maybe it's substance abuse, counseling, other things that they would need to round out and stay stably housed. Once they have that housing, it becomes so much easier. We're adopting, and I think it's a national model that many people may be familiar with, or maybe not. It's called housing first, that you deal and address the housing issue first, and not many people jump through hoops to get housing. So we're really approaching it from that standpoint, and see rapid rehousing as that key to getting people successfully into their own place.
And you touched on one other thing I wanted to bring up about homeless prevention, and what you're saying dovetails that if someone is at risk of eviction or being thrown out, can't find adequate housing, doesn't have the means to pay the rent for adequate housing, that you're there to help them. All of this, Andy, really points to what it means to have a place that you can call home, and a place that you feel safe, a place that you feel sheltered for yourself, your children. And that is really the first step to regaining a sense of self-worth and integrity, and therefore the opportunity to never have to turn back, to look forward and take advantage of some of the other programs that the Alliance is offering for people, so that they can really get their legs under them, get a footing, and try to get healthy and become a member of our community in a different way. That just, I don't know, Andy, that just really always strikes me as being the core of the well-being of a community.
You said it beautifully, and I don't know if I can say it any better than that. It really is the housing that is the link to a person's growth and self-sufficiency and moving forward with their life. If they have that stable base, they can move on and do the things they need to. And we really view that as well with that homeless prevention, that if you have the opportunity to be preventive and not have a person go through the homeless system with emergency shelter or other things, if you can shortcut that by taking care of the rental arrears or other parts of the eviction process, then we can maintain stability within the community. And in a larger scale, that those people can continue to work, they can continue to be a part of the community. They don't have to have their kids come out of school to move school. They don't have to move in with somebody else. There's a lot of advantages. And right now, more than ever with the pandemic, and there's a moratorium on the evictions right now, but there is going to be a kind of tidal wave, I think is the best way to look at it, of people who have back arrears because they haven't had the jobs or they've been put out of work because of the pandemic. So we're really looking at that prevention piece to be a stabilizing factor within the community.
Terrific. To our viewers on the bottom of the screen, you've seen a website. If you're dangerously close to being thrown out of an apartment, someone who's homeless, you want to help, contact the Alliance. So much of what Andy and I are talking about contribute to the well-being of a community. There are people that are less fortunate than we are that, it's funny, I've just listened to the last thing that you were saying. And I recall recently talking to somebody at a coffee shop, and who was helping me, right? I had a job, was working. And I said, "Oh, where do you live?" And he said, "Depends where the couch is." And these are people that had a job. This is before the COVID crisis. So you can imagine how this has all been magnified as a result of that.
Definitely.
Well, thanks, Andy. It's always great to talk to you. And you're welcome anytime. Come on and give us updates, and I'll be checking back with you as we get through the winter to see how we're doing. Okay.
Wonderful. I'd love to give you an update on how we do later on with this, and we're just really excited for the opportunity to make a big impact. And I know all the other partners in this are really looking forward to what the potential for this is, because they're all very motivated to find successful solutions for people and really help our community.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to close with one thing that Andy said to me that I'm going to ambush him with. I said, how you feel about your job, Andy? And he said, it's amazing when you can combine passion with profession. So I'm leaving it at that. You stay safe, my friend, and I'll talk to you
All right.
soon.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye.